Hello everybody and welcome to the Sovereign Village Project. One thing we are all short on for the most part right now is time and money, and that's particularly true for us as we do this house build right now. Of course, that's using up all of our extra funds and certainly our time as well. And so it's really important for us to find really time and energy and money efficient ways to get some food production going. We really want to be eating as much of our own food as possible. We really want those GMOs and pesticides out of our diet. So we're racing to get as much food going as we can. So I wanted to show you kind of the early results of an experiment I've been working on. So I'll explain kind of the background of that. I was at the feed store the other day and I noticed they had deer plot turnips, and they were really cheap. They were in bulk because they're just for deer, right? But turnips are turnips, so at least that's my theory. So I bought this bag and didn't really have any veg prepared. So I was like, you know what, this is so cheap, I don't have time. I'm just gonna start spreading the seeds everywhere and just see what happens. And the reason I thought that this might be a little bit feasible for this site is we're not on a lawn. So this isn't a hard, compacted, damaged soil. A lot of this property is recently cleared and it was a small shrubby forest. So we have a layer of tops of kind of mulch from pine needles. And then just below that we have some nice, decent, okay, kind of crumbly soil. You know, it's not amazing, but it's better than what you would probably find in a lawn. And a lot of our property is that way. So I did not bury any of these seeds. I just walked around throwing these turnip seeds out. And so this was a few days ago, and thus far we're getting really great results. They're starting to pop up everywhere here. Obviously they're gonna need thinned, but they're having no trouble taking at all. They're taking off all on their own without being buried. And one reason we did that in this area, this is in a spot we're logging off. This is gonna be our main commercial crop area. This is gonna be the piece of the farm that looks the least like a permaculture farm and more like a conventional farm, although it will still be definitely a permaculture setup. Here's kind of the start of one of the beds we're gonna be building here. We're doing sort of an instant garden meets hugel mound idea. We're using both sticks, we're using whatever is around here for mulch. We're not bringing in anything really. I mean, I might bring in a few things, but we're using what we got. We're gonna be using the rabbit manure that comes from the rabbit hutch, cardboard, pine needles, just whatever's lying around. We're making these hugel beds slash instant garden beds. And so they're not gonna be all that thick. So our plants we plant in them are still gonna reach down to the original native soil. So I want to be improving that as quickly as I can. So a good way to do that, to kind of till your soil without tilling it, is putting things like turnips or daikon radishes or other large root crops into the ground. You let them grow and then you just leave them. You let them die and then they rot, and all that space they took up in the soil kind of implodes and collapses, and worms and bugs and microbiology moves in and they take care of that. They get rid of that turnip for you and they leave behind lots of beautiful microbiology poops and dead bodies and then just more organic matter. They bring life to that spot and it's very aerated and squishy. So that's what we want in soil. Daikon radishes are popular, but really I can't see why any root crop wouldn't work that way. So that's kind of what we're trying here, is we just scattered them out, threw them just big handfuls, went for volume. Since I'm not actually burying them in the ground, we're just going for volume. Now, even though we're not going to be harvesting most of these, we're just going to be letting them improve the soil like that. We're certainly going to harvest some of them. If I walk by and see one of the turnips is doing better than the others, I'm absolutely going to grab it. And they'll be out here all winter. This will be a backup food source for us. A lot of these root crops can stay in the ground most of the way through winter and not rot. So this is a pantry. I just turned that field into my winter pantry with almost no money and almost no time or energy investment at all. And I want to show you some other spots. I walked along this pathway and I threw out these turnip seeds. Here's a good little margin we used. This had a compost pile on it. The compost pile is gone, but the soil underneath it was pretty improved, you know, and there's bits of compost left. We don't want weeds to take up that space. We want food to take up that space. So I tossed those in. Once again, I didn't bury them, but they're coming up nicely. As you can see, they're super thick. So what we're going to do is, in a few more days when those seedlings get a little bit bigger, we'll harvest a lot of them from microgreens. I talked about that in a previous video. We'll harvest those from microgreens. We'll put them in everything. And then when they're spaced out properly, we'll let the rest of those grow into turnips. And these spots in the soil, we will actually harvest more of these. Here's another one. This was actually a failed garden bed. We had okra and melons and tomatoes in here. They just didn't do too well. There wasn't enough light. I didn't get to clearing some of the trees that were blocking light yet. So it didn't do great. So we already had this empty space in the bed. Tossed the turnips in there. They did great. I'll show you one more here. This is beneath our compost bin. And always beneath the compost bin, you get all the juices coming out and you get bits of compost coming out. And any downhill spot from a compost area is just a rich, great spot. So why let that go to waste? So once again, turnips. So we've used a lot of margins, we put in no effort. I've literally spent more time just now recording this video than I planted all this, and that's a lot of food production. It's all the way over there, and it's also buried just in random spots throughout the woods, so I won't find most of these. The deer won't find a lot of them, the other animals won't find a lot of them because they're just scattered throughout the brush, and for deer or rabbits, they're gonna find other sources. So I'm gonna have all sorts of surprise turnips out here that are going to be there for me during the winter. You know, if things got rough this winter, we're going to know, okay, we probably have a few hundred turnips out there, and those are a really good root staple crop that will really get you through tough times. So I hope that gives you just some ideas. There's a couple ideas wrapped up in this video, one of which is tilling your soil with daikon radishes or turnips or other root crops. Beets would probably work well for that. And remember, nothing has to be absolute. You can harvest some, you can leave some in the ground. And the other is the idea of just tossing out seeds into a landscape like this and seeing how they do. So far, so good. And the last benefit is that I will attract deer up in here to come eat those turnips, and I'll trade a few turnips for protein. I'll definitely make that trade any day. So hope you all gleaned some useful information from this. In the meantime, stay safe, be well, and happy homesteading.